still questioning why God chose you, huh? He knew you were exactly what they needed. He knew you would fight for them. And under no circumstances will you ever give up.
Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of Awkward Moms. My name is Brittany Daniels, and I am back. I took a little break because, kids going back to school. That took up a little bit of time, and then just needing a bit of a mental break. So I took a little break, took a little time off just to kind of regroup. I got on here today to talk about RTI plans. But as I was preparing, my mindset sort of shifted. I'm still going to get on RTIs, but I want to take a moment to say that a lot of times I take breaks because I need them mentally, because sometimes my mental is just all over the place. When I decided to do this, I remember that I told myself that I can't allow it to overtake me mentally if it's not going in the direction that I want it to go in. And so I have been good with, not overthinking it, not overdoing it, not going into a hole mentally. I've been doing good with that. But today I just had a feeling like everything was kind of falling apart. I had kids in the neighborhood making a lot of noise, which was going to make it difficult for me to record because it's hard to cut that background noise out. My mic picks up everything. Um, then I had my button go out on me that starts my videos. And so I was just feeling discouraged, and I was just like, I'm just not recording today. Like, I'm tired and I'm just not doing it. I had a long day and I'm just not doing it. But God had to remind me that when I asked him to give me an idea of what to do with all of this knowledge that I'm carrying, that he told me that it wasn't going to be easy. And he did. I remember writing in my little journal book that I have, just writing down some goals that I have for my life. And I remember writing, Brittany, always remember that what you're doing is not always going to be easy, but it's perfect because God gave it to you. And so I had to remind myself of that in those moments where I was getting frustrated. Like right before I hit record, I was so frustrated. But I had to remind myself of what I told myself and what God told me. And so I had to think about, yeah, a lot of times I'm frustrated. A lot of times the editing doesn't go right. A lot of times the video doesn't come out correctly. There's a lot of editing. There's a lot of things that I have to do. And then sometimes I just have to completely wait until my entire neighborhood is quiet. Wait until my house is quiet because I have to shut everybody down if I'm recording. Sometimes I have to just wait, but sometimes that's aggravating because that's late and I'm posting late and I don't like that. So I just had to kind of remind myself that I'm doing this with the goal in mind, and that goal is to reach as many parents as I possibly can to give them all of the knowledge that I possibly can. And so even in those moments where it gets frustrating, you have a purpose. And you have to fulfill that purpose because you told God that you needed him to help you through it. And who am I to ask God to help me through it and I don't see it through? So I just wanted to put that out there. That's not what I was supposed to come and say. But as soon as I calmed myself down, that dropped in my spirit. So I just feel like if you have a goal in mind, if you have something that you're trying to accomplish, and you're going through the process of feeling like I just want to give up on this because it's frustrating, I don't think God ever drops anything in our lap that's going to be easy. If it's too easy, then it's probably not it. So let's always remember that he had to go to the cross, and we all know that wasn't easy. So the thing is, if he had to endure hardship, then who are we to feel like we're not supposed to endure any hardship? So again, that's off topic. Not exactly why I came on here today, but He dropped it in my spirit. I had to release that. I feel better because it's released now. And now we can get to why I'm here. Again, this is episode 7 of Awkward Moms. And again, I took a little hiatus because kids going back to school. We have so many things that we had to prepare for. We had open houses, and then I just took a week off period, and then the week of school, the week right before school starting back, I just decided to just take a break and fully focus on open house. Then I have work, I have my household, I have so many things that I juggle throughout the day. I say all the time, I wish I had a day where I could just sit down and do nothing, but that's not realistic for my life. So I needed to take a break, at least from this, just for 2 weeks, just to just take a break, clear my head, get myself together, because believe it or not, a lot of research goes into this. I don't know everything, so I have to research, I have to learn things, so it takes time for me to get it done. So I just took a little moment, but I'm back. um as I always do, I want to thank the people that fully support me, that watch my videos, that share my videos, that like my videos, that comment, that just fully support me. I thank you, thank you, thank you so much, because this could not be done without you. I thank you. I'm always going to thank you over and over again, because I cannot make this happen without you. If you're not doing these things for me, I'm not reaching the people that you know. So if you do these things for me, you're reaching people that I don't know, that I can get to. So I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so like I said, today I'm going to talk about RTIs. So my last episode I talked about 504 plans. And so like I said, there's 3 parts to um if your child is on a plan at school that's helping them, whether it be special education, just behavioral concerns, that kind of thing. They have 3 different plans that you can acquire for your child. So I talked about the 504 plan last. So this episode I'm going to talk about RTIs. IEPs are last. I put IEPs last purposefully because that's a lot. That's a wide spectrum. I may have to do 2 parts to IEPs. So that is coming, but we're gonna knock out RTIs today. I know a little about RTIs because my youngest son was on an RTI at a certain point. He's on an IEP now, but at a certain point he started out on an RTI. And a lot of that was simply because he was struggling with his reading, and also he was having some behavioral concerns. If you know me personally, you know how I fix behavioral concerns. But also with his reading and stuff, it was a struggle. He was making great grades, but it was just him needing that help with getting his reading up to par. So that's something that I sat down and I talked to his teachers about, because yes, I am that parent that if I have to ask questions, I will ask. I'll send emails, I'll call, I'll go out there, whatever, to figure out what we need to do to help my kids. Gotta advocate for your kids. Always gonna say that. So although this is about Gavin, because Gavin has autism, my baby boy was also on an RTI. So I want to kind of dive into that. So for everyone wondering, what is an RTI? Okay, so an RTI is a response to intervention. So if your child is having struggles with certain things or whatever, eventually you want some kind of response to it. You want something that's going to help that. So a RTI is in place. It stands for a response to intervention. It's a multi-tier approach used in schools to help identify and support students with learning and behavioral needs. So, although it helps with learning, what I found is that it helps a lot if you have kids with behavioral concerns, because some things are not just easily fixed with discipline at home or discipline at school or putting them in ISS or putting them in. some things are just not fixed with that. It's not that simple because some children really have like literal behavior problems that need to be addressed, and it can be a distraction to the classroom. But some kids cannot help it because there may be something attached to that behavior concern. So that's why you put different plans in place to let's figure out what we can do to accommodate that child, so he or she can no longer be a distraction to the classroom. So the first thing they'll do is do an assessment. So this is what I gather about the assessment, and I must say this is something that I learned myself. I did not realize that they do an initial assessment on all of the kids, not just yours because you feel like yours has an issue. All of the kids get this assessment. That was something that I learned. I did not realize that, did not know that, but I think that is a great thing. It's the initial assessment is given to all students to identify students who may be struggling academically or behaviorally. So basically, I'm going to test your child to see where they are, to see if we need to apply this to them, because it may be something there that you as the parent may not see. It could even be something there that the teacher may not see. So the thing is, with my son walking into school, unless you have him sit down and read, you don't know that he has a reading concern, especially considering that he makes great grades. So you're not looking at it like this kid may have a reading delay or a reading concern. Not if you're looking at a child that sits down and makes an A on a test. I mean, that's furthest from your mind. But the thing about it is, had you not tested him, you would not have known that. So I feel like them giving the initial assessment is a great thing. Test everybody. Make sure everybody is where they need to be. As far as if they need something put in place, it may not necessarily be an RTI, but it may be something that they need put in place for them. Because everything, whether it's 504, whether it's RTI, or whether it's IEP, is simply for your child. My son's IEP, neither one of, I tell you what, Gavin and Gabriel's IEPs do not look the same. They look different because Gabriel's IEP is set in place for him and what his needs are, and Gavin's IEP is set in place for what Gavin's needs are. No kid's IEPs look the same because each kid needs something different. So the thing is, I may test Johnny, and Johnny may need an IEP, but I may test Becky, and Becky needs a 504. So I think the initial assessment being there for the kids at the beginning is great to know what each kid may need or may not need at all. So I mentioned that it's a tier system. So how the tier system works is tier 1 is high quality classroom instructions for all students. So it's basic instructions for all kids in the classroom. So that's where your testing comes in at the beginning. So all kids get this same classroom instruction. But the thing is, if all of the kids are getting the same instruction, but all of the kids are on different levels, then the thing is, you may instruct Johnny this way, but Becky needs this instruction this way. As I stated earlier in one of my videos, Gavin can't take 3 directions. So you may be able to give Gabriel 3 directions and he follows all 3. But because Gavin has autism, he can't follow all 3 of those directions. So each child, if you go ahead and figure out what each child is good at and what they may be struggling with from the beginning, you knock that out. Early detection, that's important. Tier 2, targets interventions for students who are struggling. So basically, we do tier 1 for all kids. We figure out which kids need what. And for the kids that need nothing, we put them over here. Okay, so all of the kids that need some type of assistance, we put them in tier 2. Because now we need to figure out what exactly the assistance is that they're needing. So we'll put them in the tier 2 bunch. Tier 1, these kids are good. they're not needing any assistance. So then we'll move on to tier 3. Intensive interventions for students with significant difficulties. So we're standing at tier two with the kids that had some struggles. So from there we'll figure out, okay, you just have a behavioral concern, but it's not that deep. You just have a slight reading delay, but it's not that serious. So we'll keep you on tier 2, but everyone else that's a little bit deeper and more intense, we're going to put them at tier 3. Because then we can dive deeper into what exactly is going on with them and what exactly we need to do to accommodate them in the way that they need accommodating, because they're going to need something different from tier 1 kids and tier 2 kids. So that's why they have those tiers set in place for each child, because again, each child is different. What they need is different. The accommodations they need is different. So tiers being set in place, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here, makes it easier. So the difference between an IEP and an RTI is a multi-tiered system that focus the early intervention and prevention of academic or behavioral difficulties, while an IEP is a legally mandated plan for students with disabilities requiring specialized instruction. So basically, or RTI can be maneuvered. It can be adjusted to how you want it to flow. An IEP is a little bit different because that is legal. It's a legal document. So the thing is, the way a IEP is set up, there's guidelines that you have to follow, and it has to flow just like that because it's a legal thing. When you're talking about an RTI, it's a little bit different, and you can kind of maneuver it in a way that you need to adjust it. So that's the difference between, if you're asking, why does my child have an RTI, but your child has an IEP? I would prefer for my child to have an IEP. Well, they've already did their assessments and they can see that they need something that they can maneuver for your child. But with an IEP, you can adjust things, of course, because your child changes as they grow. But there's still a certain structure process that you have to follow with an IEP. I realized that from sitting in so many IEP meetings. I realized that although a lot of their things change, and although there's a lot of accommodations that we have erased that they no longer need, we still have to follow the same protocol. We still have a list of things that we have to follow. There's still a protocol that has to be followed. So that's the difference between those two. RTIs aim to identify struggling students and provide targeted interventions. So it's pretty much like, if we sit him in a classroom where there's a lot of noise, he's going to act out. That's a target. We know that we can't sit this class and this kid in a classroom with a lot of noise because the acting out starts. Let's target that. Let's put that in the RTI so we know that this is something that we have to follow. But that could be while he's 5 years old. Okay, now he's 10. Noise doesn't bother him anymore. So we can remove that. We can maneuver that. Versus an IEP, I don't have the words for it, but it's a little bit different. Removing stuff is a little bit different. With IEPs, you kind of, you don't just remove it. You have to kind of follow it, it levels off versus just, let's take it off. Like an IEP doesn't work like that. So with an RTI, with this something as, not saying that's a simple behavior, but it can be compared to some things that I see. Something as simple as that, we can just see how long this is gonna go, and as soon as it changes, let's just take it off. So that's where an RTI comes in. The focus for our RTI is early identification and support through evidence-based intervention. So it basically is, let's figure this out early. Let's figure out what we need to do. Let's pay attention to it. Let's really dive into whether it's some more testing or whether it's just someone sitting in the classroom and just taking notes, or whether it's, hey, turn in some of the classwork. Let's identify what the kid may be struggling with out of this homework. Whether it's that, it's basically taking a lot of identification and making it as evidence to support that RTI. So I see that when I did 2 plus 2, he had that. It's 4. But then when I moved him up to 4 plus 4, he struggled with getting it to 8. So let's figure out where the breakdown is. So that's kind of how RTI works. It's kind of like looking and kind of visually seeing things and kind of seeing where the struggle is coming in at. So once we get that identified, we can figure out what we need to apply to this RTI. Okay. So to focus more on the tiers and how the tiers work. Okay, so a tier 1 is high quality care instructions using research based reaching methods and materials for all general education. So examples of that is teaching phonics, using guided reading, and providing differentiated instruction based on student needs. So each student, as I said earlier, each student is going to need something different. What each student needs is not the same. So it's just making sure that you have a general classroom thing, but at the same time, this kid may need the general classroom instruction, but need something a little bit more intensive. So basically, when you're on tier 1, you can kind of follow the general guidelines of whatever the general curriculum is in that classroom. So tier 1 kids, they're kind of like, whatever you put on my desk, I can get done, and I don't need a lot of help with it. That's what tier 1 kids said. Tier 2 is targeted interventions. Students who don't respond to tier 1 instruction may receive targeted instruction like small group to focus on specific skills. Examples is use specialized reading programs, math intervention groups, social skills training, and peer tutoring. So the specialized reading programs, that was the number one reason why Gabriel was on an RTI. He needed the specialized reading stuff. So with specialized reading, whether that's having a device that reads something for you, having an inclusion teacher sitting beside you reading the instructions for you, being sit home with different sight words so you can gather your vocabulary better and you know what you're looking at. That's kind of what specialized reading programs are. Also, whatever reading program is put in place at school, whether it's something that they're offering at the library. Hey, do you think you can get your child to the library for this program that we're offering, where we're doing some reading skills and some like making sure that you get that reading strong is what specialized programs is. Math intervention groups. I'm not a math scholar, so I probably needed math intervention groups because I'm not great at math at all. But math intervention groups are, of course, it's basic. You know, it's you have a struggle with math, so let's get you some help with math. So whether that's putting you in a small group where you can have more time to focus on your math work. I've realized with my kids that small group works better than the whole classroom because a lot of times you're easily distracted. But if I put you in small group and it's just maybe 4 of you guys, you focus better and that gives you more time. So math intervention groups, I'm sure, as I stated, is something that I needed. Social skills training. Some kids, they don't necessarily have autism, but they struggle socially. Don't really know the wording for that. I know it is a word for that. Kids who just struggle socially. I've heard a lot of words for it that I feel like are not the correct terms. But some kids that just socially struggle. And Some adults socially struggle. So I mean, just getting them at a young age so they won't become the adult that has that struggle is a good thing. Peer tutoring, I feel like that's a great thing. They can, I feel like they can grasp more from their peer than what they can from the teacher. Not saying that the teacher is not giving them the information that they need, but sometimes just think about it. If you're taking um different advice or you're taking something from I'm giving a great example. Your mom tells you something and you kind of throw that away because you're like, she's just mama. But your sibling tells you the exact same thing. Or your friend tells you the exact same thing. And you kind of like, you know what? My mama said that, but now that you say it, that's kind of how peer tutoring is. It's kind of like, we understand each other because we're kind of on the same level. So I can take it from you better. And I also just like peer tutoring, period. I just love to see kids who want to help kids who may be at a lower level than them, want to see them prosper, wants to see them do better, do as well as they're doing, or even better. I love to see that. So I feel like peer tutoring is a great thing. Moving on to tier three. Tier three is of course intensive intervention. Students who don't make adequate progress in tier two and need more intensive interventions. Examples: more frequent one-on-one specialized instruction programs, or receiving support from specialists like speech language pathologists or educational therapists. So back to Gabriel. This is Gabriel's episode, I guess. Um, he was receiving speech therapy as well. So that was one of the things that had to be put in his RTI because he does receive speech therapy. So once he reached tier three and he topped out on tier three, that's when we decided to do an IEP. He's still in speech therapy. So I understand tier three a little bit better than I understand any of the other ones because again he was on tier three. Also, I said more frequent one-on-one specialized instruction programs. So that's when your inclusion teacher comes in. So basically, an inclusion teacher is in the classroom, and any child, it could be, they could have up to 5 students in that classroom that are their kids. Yes, the teacher is their teacher, but the inclusion teacher is there to assist because sometimes with having a classroom full of kids, you need someone there to kind of, they used to call them parapros. You need a parapro in place. Well, inclusion teacher is a slightly different from a parapro. The parapro is there to assist the teacher. The inclusion teacher is there to assist the student. So that's when you have your inclusion teacher come in to kind of, okay, you can't read that, I'll read that to you. Okay, you don't understand this, let me break this down to you one-on-one, because teacher can't always run to do it. But if I have an inclusion teacher in place, it's my job to make sure that my student that was given to me understands what they need to understand. Also, what I learned about an inclusion teacher is, because both of my kids have inclusion teachers, what I learned is they do more communicating with the parents than the actual teacher. I talk to I have a relationship with their inclusion teachers versus their actual teachers. Now, mind you, I do have a relationship with their teachers, but I talk to inclusion teachers more because whether there's a behavioral concern, whether there's a educational concern or whatever, inclusion teachers reach out to me directly. Like, I get a text message. Like, if there's something going on, I let them know when I first meet them, hey, you got my number? Let me know. Like, so I build rapport with inclusion teachers because I know that you're the person that's one-on-one with them. Versus I understand the teacher has to do the whole classroom. So I'm so thankful for inclusion teachers. I'm so thankful for them including that in the curriculum now because I feel like kids need that. Every kid is not going to catch on to everything that the rest of the kids catch on. Some kids, they need that one-on-one time with someone. And if my teacher can't do it, okay, let me call my inclusion teacher. So that's usually what comes with tier 3. So progress monitoring. Tier 1, regularly assessing student progress using the universal screening tools and classroom-based assessments. So we all know as parents, it doesn't matter if your kid has a behavioral concern. It doesn't matter if your kid's on IEP 504. It doesn't matter if your child's on anything. It doesn't matter. They get tested to death. Every time I turn around, there is some kind of test, some kind of assessment, some kind of something. And at first, I used to fuss about it because I was like, oh my God, can they just go to school? Like, just go to school, learn the curriculum, and that's it. Y'all test them to death. But I understand it. I had to learn to understand that, every child is different. And you need to know that your child is learning on the level that they need to learn and that they're getting everything that they need. And so if we assess that, then we know if your child is getting everything they need. If we test that, then we know where your child is. So regularly assessing students and making sure they're getting everything they need. I had to learn that is so important. Because how do you know where they are if you don't test them? How do you know where they are if you don't take assessments to see where they are? Now, the one thing that I don't agree with, just being honest, is I don't agree with testing them and deciding whether or not they can go to the next grade. I hate that because every child is different. And I feel like some kids are not good test takers. And anxiety sinks in. And although you can have a brilliant mind because you're sitting down in front of a test and that anxiety is sinking in, you bomb that test. So now I have to sit back in my grade because I didn't pass that test. I'm speaking from a parent who went through it. They wanted to hold Gavin back into the 8th grade because he didn't pass. I can't remember which part, but it was a part of his milestone test that he did not pass. And so they were saying that he needed to come to summer school. I was upset. But at the same time, I had to learn that, just go with the flow, Brittany. Don't react. Don't go out there showing out at the people's school. All of that. Just breathe and just go see what he needs to do and follow protocol. That's what I did. And because I paused and I didn't become, I'm a hovering mama. I'm an overprotective mama. When it comes down to my kids, I'm that. I'm that. So, and because I didn't react in the way that I normally would have, when I got out to the school and we were about to take him in for summer school, we actually ran into the guy that was over, Mr. Woodfin, that was over the National Honor Society. Well, Gavin had been inducted into the National Honor Society. So he looked and he's looking like, why is Gavin here? I mean, and I'm like, well, they said he failed this part, so he had to come to summer school. And so he looked at me and he said, take him home. I mean, his GPA, I think at that point was like 3.8. So having my child having to sit through summer school or risk sitting back in the 8th grade based off a test when my child has testing anxiety, I mean, it's just not fair. So I had to release that. I mean, I try not to be controversial on here or whatever, but when it comes down to that, that bothers me because I feel like every child is on a different level. Every child's testing skills are different, and I just sometimes feel like that's unfair. Getting back on topic, tier 2 is regularly assessing student progress to make sure interventions are working. So of course in tier 1, you don't really have interventions in place. But by the time you reach tier 2, there are some interventions that we put in place to make sure that that child can flourish in the classroom. So tier 2 basically checks behind are these um are these interventions that we put in place, are they working? Or do we need to adjust something? Is something not working? Do we need to go harder on this or lighten up on this? So that's kind of what tier 2 does. We kind of make sure, always make sure that what we're doing is working. So that way, your child can flourish. That's the purpose of doing it. So just making sure that, whether it's testing, whether it's, again, sitting down and paying attention to classwork, if it's a behavior concern, watching behaviors. Did they get wrote up today? How was behavior in class today? Was he quiet? Was she active? Did we have any outbursts? That kind of thing, just assessing that. Tier 3 is frequent progress monitoring, the effectiveness of interventions and making adjustments. So tier 3, of course, like I said, is more rigorous. So tier 3 is constantly checking progress, constantly monitoring those interventions and making sure that they're effective. Because at tier 3, like I said, eventually you level off. And if you level off, you're headed to, most of the time, IEP. You can level off and head to 504 or level off to have nothing, but ultimately you have to reach tier 1 before you can do that. So tier 3 is basically making sure, do we not need to go to an IEP to kind of make sure that they're good? So tier 3 is frequently making sure that we're monitoring what's going on with that child, or how is classwork going? How is behavior going? How are these things going, to make sure that we're giving them all of the accommodations that we can possibly give them. So tools that are used for RTIs: technology, collaborating with specialists, developing written intervention plans, adapting to instruction on learning styles, focusing on specific skills gaps in phonics, awareness, fluency, or math. So using technology, kids can work phones better than us, bottom line. So why not use technology? Not a whole lot I got to talk about that. I mean, technology is the world, so why not use it? Collaborating with specialists, that's your speech therapist, that's your counselors, that's your occupational therapist, that's your mental health therapist, that's all of the people that's set in place to make sure that those things that can't be done in the classroom are being done. So that's your specialist. Having a written plan, that's just basically having an RTI. It's basically writing everything out, making sure that, we have everything on paper listed for everybody to see, because everybody can't sit in those meetings. So if we have something written out, then the teacher that had something to do that day that wasn't at work and wasn't able to make that meeting has something written out, so she or he will know what guidelines we're following or what we're taking out. Adapting to instruction on learning styles. That's one of those things that, basically it's the child adapting. It's the child getting what they need. It's the child learning what they need to learn. So that's pretty simple. It's the child adapting to what we put in place. Focusing on specific skill gaps, phonic awareness, fluency, or math is basically what are the gaps and what do we need to fill. So is there a phonic problem, which is, basically reading or writing or spelling? Is there a phonic problem that we need to fix? Is there something that we need to focus more on? Math, general. Are we struggling with math? Is there something that we need to do to make sure that math is fully working for that child? So those are the tools that they use in RTIs. So basically an RTI is a record and reported data. It is important with an RTI, to consistently track where the student is at all times. To make sure that, if we're on tier 3, we might need to go to tier 1. If we're on tier 2, we might need to jump to tier 3. So just consistently tracking to see if that child is not sitting on a tier that they don't necessarily have to be on and getting accommodations that they don't necessarily need. Like, for example, I have an inclusion teacher in the classroom and the child is never utilizing the inclusion teacher. So for what reason are we continuously keeping that in place if it's not a necessity? So basically, just keeping track of what the child needs. Something that I push, make sure you always receive a copy of the RTI for your records. Always, 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 always receive a copy and hold on to those copies because they're for your records. And the thing is, look at it like this. If I sat down with you and we came up with a plan for my child, if my child is not getting all of the things that you told me that you were going to, all the accommodations that you told me that you were going to give to my child, I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to take you back to when we sat down and we discussed that we would do this for my child. But my child is not getting this accommodation. I have an issue with that because we put in this right here on this copy that I have, we put that my child will be accommodated for this and that. Let's make sure that we always follow what we say we're going to follow. So always have a copy for your records. Always make sure that you have something that you can look at as well and not just the school. So I'm gonna wrap this up. It's been a day. So I'm going to wrap this up. If you have any more questions or concerns or anything about RTIs, please contact me. As I say all the time, I always put my contact information on the end. Contact me, email me, message me, whatever, to let me know that, I got a question about this or I'm wondering about that. If I don't know, I don't, as I say all the time, I don't mind going down that rabbit hole to find out for you. That's how I am. I don't mind. So if you have a question, if you have a concern, there's not a such thing as a dumb question. So never think that, well, I should probably know this, but we don't know everything. We live it every day, but we don't know everything. So reach out to me. I would love to help in whatever way that I can. This is going to wrap up episode 7. And thank you guys for always supporting me. Bye bye.